Welcome to my YouTube channel, The Storyverse Legends. On my channel, the video I upload doesn't contain any AI content, any robotics or any fake voices. So, without any wasting of time, let's go to the video.
Captain James Walker stood at the front of the bridge with his hands locked behind his back, staring into the black emptiness beyond Neptune.
Out there,
the stars looked cold enough to freeze a man's soul. The only light came from the engines of the last human warships drifting beside the valiant Dawn. 72 ships. That was all humanity had left. 20 years earlier, Earth had ruled half the solar system. Mars had become a second home. Mining colonies stretched across Jupiter's moons, and trade stations floated near Saturn's rings like glittering cities in the dark. Then the Dravari came. Nobody even knew where the aliens came from. One day, long-range probes vanished near the Orion frontier. The next day, entire colonies burned. The Dominion didn't negotiate. They conquered. And they kept coming. James took a slow breath as the bridge lights reflected across the scar running along his jaw. He'd spent half his life fighting this war, half his life watching good people disappear into vacuum fire and broken metal. Long-range scanners active, Lieutenant Emily Carter said from navigation. Her voice sounded tight, nervous. James turned slightly. "What do you got?" Emily hesitated. Then her face lost color. Movement near Orion's gate. Every officer on the bridge looked up instantly. Commander Michael Hayes stepped beside James. "How many ships?" Emily zoomed the tactical display onto the main screen. Red warning markers flooded the map. Her voice dropped to nearly a whisper. 300. Maybe more. Silence swallowed the bridge. Outside the armored windows, the human fleet floated near the unstable wormhole known as Orion's Gate, the only passage capable of reaching Earth. In days instead of months. If the Dravari captured it, the war was over. Michael rubbed a tired hand across his beard. "We can't stop that many." James kept staring at the enemy formation, slowly emerging from the glowing blue storm of the gate. Massive black warships, rows and rows of them, like wolves stepping out of the dark. "Maybe not," James said quietly. "But we can sure as hell make 'em bleed." A few nervous laughs broke across the bridge. Then alarms suddenly blared. "Incoming transmission." Olivia Brooks shouted from communications. "Source: the Dravari flagship." James nodded once. "Put it through." The screen flickered. A towering alien commander appeared, armored in dark silver plating. His glowing eyes studied the humans like they were already dead. "Human fleet," the creature growled. "Surrender Orion's Gate, and your species may survive." James leaned against the command rail with the calm confidence of an old gunslinger facing impossible odds. "You boys crossed a long stretch of space," he said. "Would be a shame if you left in pieces."
The alien commander's face vanished from the screen. 2 seconds later, the first Dravari cannons fired. Bright blue plasma ripped across the darkness like lightning tearing through a storm cloud. The human fleet scattered instantly as explosions lit the void around Orion's Gate. "Incoming fire!" Emily Carter yelled. The valiant Dawn shook hard enough to throw sparks from the ceiling panels. James Walker grabbed the command rail. "Return fire! All batteries!" Heavy railguns thundered beneath the ship. Massive steel rounds screamed through space and slammed into the lead Dravari destroyer. The enemy vessel split apart in a burst of fire and spinning debris. Cheers erupted across the bridge, but they didn't last long. 3 more enemy cruisers pushed through the wreckage without slowing down. "Lord above," Michael Hayes muttered. "These ugly bastards just keep coming." Outside the bridge windows, the battle exploded into chaos. Human fighters darted between enemy warships like hornets, launching missiles before vanishing behind drifting wreckage. Nearby frigates unloaded everything they had into the advancing Dravari line. But the Dominion fleet barely slowed. James watched one human cruiser take a direct plasma hit. The ship disappeared in white fire. No distress call, no survivors. Olivia Brooks lowered her headset slowly. "We just lost the Arizona Dawn." James clenched his jaw but kept his voice steady. "Keep the line together!" Another violent impact rocked the valiant Dawn. "Shields down to 60%, Emily warned. James looked toward the tactical display. The Dravari were pushing hard toward the western flank. If they broke through there, they'd surround the entire human fleet. And once that happened, game over. Michael noticed it too. They're herding us. James nodded slowly. Yeah. He grabbed the command console. Helm, bring us forward. Emily looked stunned. Forward! Captain, that's their heavy attack zone. Exactly. Michael stared at him. James, that's suicide. James gave a crooked grin. Only if we lose. The valiant dawn surged ahead, engines roaring bright blue against the darkness. Enemy fire hammered the ship from every direction. Warning sirens screamed non-stop now. Then suddenly... Captain! Olivia shouted. Enemy battleship locking weapons! A massive Dravari warship turned toward them. Its main cannon glowed with enough energy to vaporize half the ship in one shot. Michael whispered, "This is gonna hurt." Before the cannon could fire, dozens of human fighters burst from behind a drifting asteroid field. Squadron leader Ethan Brooks came over the comms. "Thought y'all could use a hand." The fighters slammed into the enemy battleship like angry devils. Missiles exploded across its hull. One fighter after another got blown apart, but the battleship's cannon went dark. James stared at the burning battlefield outside. Humanity was outnumbered, outgunned, running out of time, but they still weren't backing down. The battle around Orion's gate burned hotter by the minute. Wreckage drifted through space like shattered bones while crippled ships spun helplessly through the dark. Human pilots fought like cornered wolves, but the Dravari kept advancing. Steady, relentless, like a flood that couldn't be stopped. On the bridge of the valiant dawn, warning alarms screamed from every direction. "Port shields collapsing!" Emily Carter shouted. James Walker stayed locked on the tactical screen. Red enemy markers covered nearly every sector around the gate. Too many. Way too many. Michael Hayes slammed a fist against his console. "We're getting torn apart out here!" Before James could answer, Olivia Brooks suddenly looked up from communications. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange." James turned. "Define strange." Olivia zoomed in on a scanner feed near the outer edge of the wormhole. At first it looked like static, then shapes appeared. Ships. A whole lot of them. Emily's eyes widened. "Those aren't Dravari signatures." Michael frowned. "Then whose are they?" Nobody answered. The unknown fleet slowly emerged from the glowing storm of Orion's gate. Black warships, massive engines, heavy armor, and every single ship carried an old Earth military insignia painted across the hull. The first expansion fleet. James felt his stomach tighten. That's impossible. The expansion fleet had vanished 30 years ago during humanity's first deep space expedition beyond Orion's gate. Every history book on Earth listed them as dead. Yet here they were, alive. A transmission burst across the bridge speakers. "This is Admiral William Grant of the 1st Expansion Fleet." The entire bridge froze. A weathered older man appeared on screen wearing a dark naval coat marked with faded Earth command patches. Grey streaked through his beard, and one side of his face carried an old burn scar, but his eyes looked sharp as steel. "We received Earth's distress signal," Grant said calmly. "Looks like y'all could use some backup." Michael blinked twice. "No way." Then the lost fleet attacked. Their ships charged straight into the Dravari formation like thunder rolling across open prairie. Heavy plasma cannons erupted. Entire alien cruisers exploded apart in seconds. Human crews across the battlefield erupted into cheers. For the first time in years, the Dravari line actually broke. James watched in disbelief as the forgotten fleet carved through enemy warships with brutal precision. "These ships," Emily whispered. "They're more advanced than anything we've got." Grant smirked slightly on the screen. 30 years beyond the frontier changes a man." Then his expression darkened. "But don't celebrate yet." He transmitted a long-range scan toward the valiant dawn. James looked at the screen and felt the blood drain from his face. Beyond Orion's gate, thousands of Dravari warships waited in the darkness. An entire invasion armada. Michael stared silently at the impossible numbers. "Sweet Lord," Grant folded his arms slowly. "Boys," he said grimly, "the real war's about to begin."
The war room aboard the Valiant Dawn felt colder than space itself. A giant hologram of Orion's gate spun slowly above the command table, glowing blue against the dark steel walls. Around it stood the last senior commanders humanity had left. Captain James Walker, Commander Michael Hayes, Admiral Robert King, and Admiral William Grant, the ghost who'd come back from the dead. Outside the ship, the battle still raged across the stars. Every few seconds, distant explosions flashed through the bridge windows like lightning over a desert horizon. Grant pointed toward the center of the hologram. "There's something inside the gate," he said quietly. Michael crossed his arms. "What exactly?" Grant tapped the controls. The hologram shifted. A massive structure appeared buried deep within the wormhole's core, ancient, enormous, and shaped unlike anything human engineers had ever built. James narrowed his eyes. "Hey, that ain't alien Dominion tech." "No," Grant replied. "It's older." The room fell silent. Grant looked around carefully before continuing. "When the first expansion fleet crossed Orion's gate 30 years ago, we found records left behind by an extinct civilization. They built the wormhole network." He paused. "And they built a weapon inside it." Admiral King frowned deeply. "Weapon?" Grant nodded once. "If activated, it'll collapse the entire gate permanently." Michael immediately understood. "That would trap the Dravari fleet on the far side." "Exactly." James studied the unstable energy field spinning around the ancient machine. "And what's the catch?" Grant's expression hardened. "The system has to be activated manually from inside the core." Nobody spoke for a second. Then Emily Carter quietly asked the question nobody wanted answered. "What happens to the ship that activates it?" Grant looked her straight in the eye. "It won't survive." Silence settled heavy across the room. Outside, another human cruiser exploded in the distance. Humanity was running out of time. James stared at the hologram for several long moments. Then he spoke calmly. "I'll do it." Michael snapped toward him instantly. "Absolutely not. Somebody's got to make the run, not you." James gave him a tired half-smile. "Mike, if that fleet gets through the gate, Earth's finished." Michael clenched his fists. "There's got to be another way." "There ain't." The room went quiet again. Finally, Admiral King lowered his head slowly. "If this works," he said softly, "you'll save every human world left standing." James looked back toward the stars beyond the war room window. Burning ships drifted through the darkness. Men and women were dying every minute to hold the line. He took a slow breath. "Then let's finish this thing." Warning alarms suddenly echoed through the ship. Olivia Brooks rushed into the room. "The Dravari flagship is moving toward the gate." Grant's face darkened immediately. "They know what we're planning." James grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. "Then we better move faster than they do."
The Valiant Dawn tore across the battlefield like a bullet fired straight into hell. Explosions flashed all around the ship as Dravari warships closed in from every direction. The stars themselves seemed hidden behind fire, smoke, and spinning wreckage. On the bridge, warning alarms screamed non-stop. "Enemy cruisers on our tail!" Emily Carter shouted. James Walker stood steady at the center of the chaos. One hand gripping the command rail, while the other rested behind his back, like an old sheriff walking into a gunfight. "Keep pushing toward the gate," he ordered. Michael Hayes stared at the tactical display. "James, we got half the Dominion fleet aiming at us." James smirked faintly. "Then I reckon they're finally taking us serious." The ship shook violently as plasma fire slammed into the rear shields. "Shields down to 28%, Olivia Brooks warned. Outside the bridge windows, human fighters swarmed around the Valiant Dawn, trying desperately to hold off the enemy assault. Squadron leader Ethan Brooks flew at the front of the defense line. His voice crackled through the comms. "Ain't letting these monsters touch you, Captain." James watched the fighters weave between enemy fire like cowboys riding through a hailstorm. Then one of the human fighters exploded. Then another. Michael lowered his eyes for a second. "They're dying to buy us time." James didn't answer, because they both knew it was true. Ahead of them, Orion's gate pulsed brighter and brighter. The giant wormhole twisted with violent energy, almost like it knew what was coming. Then suddenly, "Dravari flagship moving to intercept," Emily yelled. The massive enemy battleship emerged directly in front of the gate. Its dark hull stretched for miles. Rows of glowing cannons slowly turned toward the valiant Dawn. Michael muttered, "That thing could kill us with one shot." James stepped forward calmly. "Target their forward batteries." Olivia blinked. "Captain, our guns can't punch through that armor." "Maybe not," James said, "but we don't need to destroy it." Michael looked at him. "We just need to make 'em flinch." The valiant Dawn fired everything it had. Railguns thundered, missiles streaked across space. Explosions erupted against the enemy flagship's surface. The Dravari ship turned slightly, shifting its shields toward the attack. That tiny movement opened a narrow gap beside the gate. James pointed forward instantly. "There!" Emily slammed the engines to full power. The valiant Dawn surged ahead. Enemy fire chased them through the darkness as the ship raced straight toward the center of Orion's gate. Warning sirens reached deafening levels now. "Structural integrity failing!" Olivia shouted. Blue energy swallowed the ship whole. Reality twisted. Stars stretched apart like broken glass. Then the valiant Dawn crossed into the heart of the gate and saw the ancient machine waiting inside, massive, silent, and powerful enough to change the fate of humanity forever. Inside Orion's gate, the universe no longer made sense. Blue lightning twisted across endless darkness, while giant streams of energy spiraled around the valiant Dawn. The ship groaned like an old ranch house caught in a tornado. At the center of the storm floated the ancient machine. It was bigger than a city. Massive black rings rotated slowly around a glowing core, covered in symbols no human had ever seen before. The thing looked older than time itself. And somehow, still alive. On the bridge, every warning light flashed red. "Reactor instability climbing!" Emily Carter shouted over the alarms. Michael Hayes grabbed the nearest console as the ship shook violently. "This whole place is coming apart!" James Walker never took his eyes off the machine. "Can you activate it?" Emily swallowed hard while scanning the alien controls. "Yeah, but once it starts, there's no stopping it." Outside the ship, flashes of enemy fire suddenly lit the darkness. Olivia Brooks looked up sharply. "Captain, the Dravari followed us inside!" Several enemy fighters burst through the energy storm behind them, their engines glowing like demons riding through wildfire. Michael cursed under his breath. These bastards just don't quit. The Dravari ships opened fire instantly. Plasma blasts slammed into the valiant Dawn. "Shields gone!" Emily yelled. The ship lurched sideways. Sparks exploded from the ceiling. One crewman got thrown across the bridge. James steadied himself against the command rail. "Get us closer to that machine." Michael looked at him like he was crazy. "Closer? James, we're flying through the devil's backyard!" James gave a grim smile. "Then let's make the devil nervous." The valiant Dawn surged forward one final time. Enemy fighters chased them through the collapsing energy field, while the ancient machine began glowing brighter and brighter. Emily's hands flew across the controls. "I found the activation sequence!" James nodded once. "Do it!" She hesitated. Because everybody on that bridge understood what came next, Olivia lowered her headset, slowly. "Captain, there's no way out after this." James looked around at his crew. Tired faces, bloodied uniforms, men and women who'd fought for humanity until there was nothing left to give. Then he smiled softly. "Was an honor riding with y'all." Michael stared at his oldest friend for a long moment before nodding once. "See you on the other side, cowboy!" Emily activated the machine. The entire gate began to collapse instantly. Outside, thousands of Dravari warships tried desperately to retreat. Too late. The ancient structure unleashed a wave of blinding white energy across the stars. Reality itself cracked apart. The valiant Dawn disappeared into the light, and Orion's gate exploded with enough force to shake half the sector. Then everything went silent. The war was over. But Captain James Walker and his crew were gone. The war ended the same way a wildfire dies out across the prairie, fast, violent, and deadly quiet afterward. Where Orion's gate once burned across the stars, there was now only darkness and drifting wreckage. The massive wormhole was gone. Along with it, most of the Dravari invasion fleet. Humanity had survived, barely. Months later, Earth was still rebuilding. Cities damaged during the war slowly came back to life. Shipyards around Mars worked day and night, building new fleets. Across the colonies, people spoke one name more than any other: Captain James Walker, the man who rode straight into hell and never came back. At Lunar Defense Command, Commander Michael Hayes stood before a giant memorial window overlooking Earth. The blue planet glowed peacefully beneath the stars for the first time in decades. Olivia Brooks stepped beside him quietly. "Hard to believe it's over," she said softly. Michael nodded once. James would have hated sitting around during peacetime. That earned a small laugh from Olivia. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then alarms suddenly echoed through the command center. Every officer in the room turned toward the main screen. Emily Carter rushed across the floor holding a data tablet. Her face had gone pale. "We just intercepted something," Michael frowned. "Another Dravari signal?" Emily slowly shook her head. "No, sir." She activated the transmission. Static filled the speakers. Then a rough, familiar voice crackled through the noise. "This is Captain James Walker." Michael froze solid. Olivia's eyes widened. The entire command room fell silent. "If anybody's hearing this," the voice continued weakly, "we're still alive." Michael grabbed the edge of the console. "James?" The signal flickered again. Behind the static came distant engine noise. And something else. Voices. Human voices. Then the transmission cleared for half a second. A starfield appeared on screen unlike anything in human records. Massive alien structures floated beside glowing planets while enormous, unknown warships drifted through the darkness. An entirely different part of the galaxy. James appeared briefly on the damaged video feed, older, exhausted. A deep scar crossed one side of his face, but he was alive, and standing behind him was the Valiant Dawn, battered, broken, still flying. James looked directly into the camera. "You boys ain't gonna believe what's out here." The signal suddenly cut out. Silence swallowed the room. Nobody moved. Then Michael slowly smiled. "Well," he muttered, "sounds like that stubborn cowboy ain't dead after all." Outside the station windows, new human warships launched from Earth's orbit toward deep space, toward the unknown, toward whatever waited beyond Orion's gate. Because humanity had learned something during the war. The galaxy could knock humans down, it could burn their worlds, break their fleets. But it could never make them quit. And somewhere out there in the dark, the next adventure was already waiting.
Welcome back, friends. I hope you watched the whole video and enjoyed a lot. Please show your love and support. For more videos, like, share, comment, subscribe and hit the bell icon button. Thank you.